G'day chaps, is I, Clumpuncher139. We've all seen this list explaining what each Arkham game does best. Arkham Asylum had the best atmosphere, Arkham City had the best story, Arkham Origins had the best boss fights, and Arkham Knight had the best graphics and gameplay. And by now I'm sure we all agree that this list is stupidly overused and people really need to have more original ideas. Which is where I come in. I grow tired of these simple elements thrown around as the best things about these games, when each of them has so much more that's worthy of being praised. These games each have so much more to offer than these super simple factors, and nobody really seems to care. Except for me, of course. Which is why I now present to you what each Arkham game actually does best. Let's get started with Arkham Asylum. Arkham Asylum has the best hard mode. One thing Arkham Asylum has that no later game took for themselves was a dedicated hard difficulty. Now, yes, each game does have easy, normal, and hard difficulties, but what sets Arkham Asylum's hard mode apart from the rest is that you have to earn it. You can't play hard mode right from the start. You need to unlock it by beating the game on normal. For all the other games, this was simply New Game Plus. And while New Game Plus is a fine mode in and of itself, if I can be honest, it's really not all that hard. Sure, enemies deal more damage, you have no counter indicators, and some sections have been tweaked to be more difficult, but to counter this, you have every single upgrade unlocked from the main story, including extra gadgets, fully upgraded armor, and even some things you aren't supposed to have by this point in the game. This makes what are intended to be more difficult challenges far easier than even some of the ones in base game. This is the case for all the games, except for Arkham Asylum. Asylum's hard mode takes all the stuff working against you in the other game's New Game Plus, but removes all of your benefits. You don't get any upgrades. You start the game from scratch and have to battle your way through these incredibly tough swarms of enemies. Sure, encounters aren't changed all that much, but you have no armor upgrades, no free gadgets, and have to build up your arsenal from scratch while enemies are almost all able to kill you in seconds. It creates a far more difficult and therefore rewarding challenge than New Game Plus of later games. And yes, I know you're all going to bring up I Am the Knight from Arkham Origins. It's just an endlessly replayable New Game Plus. It's not a true hard mode. You want something really difficult? Try I Am the Knight's rule set on Arkham Asylum's hard mode. I can guarantee you'll find it a hell of a lot harder. I know I did. What further helps set Asylum's hard mode apart from the rest is the fact that Asylum is the most limiting game. Even when you do get upgrade points, you aren't getting the overpowered combat and gadget upgrades of the later games. There's no multi-ground takedown to delete whatever enemies you want. There's no remote claw tether to instantly take out 3 enemies for free. There's no free flow gadgets to make your life easier. The most you get are a few upgraded batarangs and critical strikes. Your armor isn't even designated between combat and ballistic. You've got just one health bar that is still obliterated in seconds if you get caught, which is all the more likely when you don't have smoke bombs to rely on. It's a hard mode like no other in the Arkham series that I'm still really surprised they never brought back, instead choosing to do New Game Plus. But in the end, it's just one thing Asylum does better than all the rest. Before I can continue on to what my favorite game does best, I need to tell you about the sponsor of this video, Underlucky Stars. Underlucky Stars creates star maps that show the night sky above a place and time that's special to you. Be it your birthday, an anniversary, or some other momentous occasion, you can see the star pattern of that exact night right in your home. And with Valentine's Day right around the corner, now is the perfect time to make use of this offer as a gift for your special someone. I know some of you have them, we aren't all lonely. All their maps are NASA certified, completely customizable, and they even ship globally, so you won't be missing out no matter where in the world you're watching from. So if you feel so inclined, use the link in the description to get 10% off your order and help support my channel. Thanks to Underlucky Stars for sponsoring, and let's get back to what Arkham City actually does best. Arkham City has the best replayability / speedrun. I'm sure this is a really subjective entry for a lot of you, and most of y'all will probably disagree, but it's my list. Deal with it. As someone who has to play these same 4 games over and over and over and over again, believe me when I say that it can get a little draining. Having to listen to the same dialogue, play through the exact same sequence of events, sit through the same cutscenes every single time. Gets really boring after the first 30 times. That being said, when it comes down to which single game I would play for the rest of my life, I'm instantly picking Batman Arkham City. This is just such a fun and engaging game to play through, partly because I always subconsciously speedrun it. And this game just has such a fun and fascinating speedrun to me. It's 2 straight hours of constant action that never slows down. You're always doing something in this run. At most, you'll have a minute of inactivity due to an unskippable cutscene, but then you're right back into the action. This run is all about precise movement and finding a way to get through encounters super quickly, and both are a ton of fun, while also integrating just the right amount of side content to get yourself enough experience points for upgrades. It's a great balance of learning what's necessary and what's not, while also flat out ignoring some encounters that only exist to waste time. It's all about speed. And even if you're going for a more casual playthrough, it's still just as enjoyable because you still have that tiny amount of downtime. You are always on the move in Arkham City. At most, you get just over a minute of downtime from the very few unskippable cutscenes and walking simulators, and generally, those slow moments are followed by large bursts of movement and action that make sitting through them worth it. And every time I play through it, I get that little bit better or learn a small tidbit that I can use for later. It's just such a fun and engaging run all the way through, where even the boring parts like scanning the Wonder City Guardians have speed tech that makes them more engaging than they'd otherwise be. Supposed auto-scrollers like the Demon Trials have little pieces of tech you can implement to make them that little bit faster, while also serving as a risk-reward that will either punish your hastiness or reward your skill. And then just all the little things too, like using the line launcher to get to freeze faster than gliding, using the wreck to knock over armored guys so you don't have to punch them, using the grapnel boost to completely circumvent the ice walking section and Tiny. It all just makes perfect sense, but is so cool to use when you first discover it. Arkham City has a speedrun like no other. It's got the perfect difficulty curve that's easy to learn and hard to master, which is why I consider it a fantastic first game for new speedrunners. It isn't overly demanding at a glance, which allows even inexperienced players to get a pretty good time. But as you slowly delve deeper and pick up new strategies, it becomes a run of the perfect difficulty that just comes down to pure execution. And that's why it has the best run of all the Arkham games. Arkham Origins has the best tutorial. A tutorial is one of the most important things you absolutely need to get right when making a game. If your player can't correctly learn how your game works within the first few minutes of gameplay, you've done something wrong as a designer. And I'd say that each of the Arkham games succeed in that regard. They all teach the player the important mechanics pretty quickly and set them on the path for success. However, they also keep a lot of mechanics hidden until they're required later down the line, or they throw you into an open world without teaching you anything and expect you to pick it up as you go. Arkham Origins circumvents both of these issues before you even get into Gotham. It teaches you almost every single mechanic you will use throughout the game in its first 20 minutes. There's no build-up sequence where you play through some interactive cutscenes or go through a walking simulator. You are thrown right into action in the Blackgate riots and are immediately told how the game works. And in case you don't believe me, let's run through everything the game teaches you, one section at a time. First, the most important thing for any game, you need to know how to move. So, the game has you walk over to the entrance of the prison using the left stick. But oh no, the entrance is blocked. How are you gonna get in there? Oh, well, the very next thing the game teaches you is how to crouch, and that you can walk while you crouch, allowing you to squeeze through this tiny hole. You're then taught that you can move faster by running, and leaves you with a long hallway to run down. It then makes sure you understood the earlier assignment with another small hole to crawl through, ensuring that you making it inside wasn't just a fluke. You're then taught how to counter, with an enemy swinging a baseball bat at your head, but time is slowed down to ensure you can get it without taking damage. You're then forced to do it again, once again making sure the first time wasn't a fluke and you can actually counter when the time is right. You're then given another long hallway to run through and a door, through which are Black Mask's henchmen. This introduces you to combat. You already learned about countering, so now you need to learn about punching. You start with only 2 enemies and are simply prompted to attack them, so you do so. In fact, one of them actually stays out of the fight to open up the cells to let other enemies in, so you really only need to focus on one and make sure you learn about punching. When those 2 more enemies join the fight, the numbers are a lot less in your favor, but it also reminds you about countering, showing that you can use counters in combat. And if you end up getting a high enough combo, you're prompted to use a combat takedown by pressing 2 buttons at the same time. It's unlikely that you'll make it to this combo count on your first try, but it rewards experienced players who do so, telling them that this useful tool is there, ready to be used. Heading down the hallway, you're then presented with 3 more enemies you need to fight, making sure you understood the combat taught just seconds ago, while also constantly prompting you to counter, so you once again know you can use it in combat. You're then locked in between 2 gates, but Batman sees a small opening overhead. This is the grappling tutorial, where you're told that you can't quite reach this area normally, but since you have a grapple gun, you can easily reach it with the press of this button. You're then presented with an armored enemy, which you'll probably try to punch just like the other guys, but you'll soon realize that that just doesn't work, and instead be prompted to stun him and perform a beatdown. This is one of the most important combat tools in your arsenal, and the other games don't teach it to you until much later in the game. So learning it now is instrumental to your future success. This is naturally followed by another grapple area, making sure you did indeed do it on purpose the first time and know how it works. You then learn about detective mode in a small room with seemingly no exit. But detective mode shows you things that you would otherwise miss, like this switch attached to the giant door in front of you. As a matter of fact, detective mode is completely disabled until you reach this point in the level, ensuring that curious players don't accidentally turn it on and don't know what it is or how to turn it off. This makes the moment you learn about it more impactful, since there are also enemies behind this door that detective mode shows, telling you that you can see enemies through walls with this incredibly powerful tool. This then also teaches you about gadgets, as you need to use a batarang to open the door, showing you the gadget wheel and how to aim and fire gadgets. But unfortunately, the door doesn't fully open, so you need to learn about something else: sliding. Sliding gets you through narrow gaps too small to be crouched under, which this hole under the door absolutely is. This puts you in another combat encounter, which is just a checkpoint to make sure you haven't lost any information about combat. There's then another button on the wall, making sure that your combat and sliding shenanigans didn't overshadow how to use batarangs seconds ago. You're then presented with a weak-looking floor, which Batman says he should use his explosive gel on. This reminds you about the gadget wheel and teaches you about a new gadget all at once. This shows how to use the explosive gel specifically on the floor beneath you, and shows that it does not harm Batman when it explodes. You then get a cutscene and are prompted with a grate, showing that Batman can easily rip them off the wall if given a few seconds of you button mashing A. You then get yet another combat section, this time starting with you dropping onto an enemy at the start. I will say this never really made sense to me because you can barely tell you're dropping onto an enemy in the first place. You just do it and then start combat. You aren't even prompted to perform a drop attack or anything, so this part is a little weird. But it's the only weird part, so I digress. Anyway, this combat section has 5 enemies, much more than you've dealt with up until now, making it slightly more difficult tests than the encounters before. After beating them up, you've got another blocked gate, but an open cell right next to you with a light shining through. This attracts your attention that maybe I should go through here, and in doing so, you see a vent on the wall. You just learned that you can rip vents off the wall moments ago, but this one is a little too high to reach. Good thing Batman has the back claw, showing you yet another gadget on the wheel, and showing that you can reach things from far away like this vent cover. You then aren't able to grapple up, but instead have to walk into the vent manually, showing that some obstacles, while tall, are short enough for Batman to jump over without the grapple gun. You're then on the other side of the wall from the enemy taunting you behind the gate, a weak wall that looks suspiciously like the floor you broke earlier. This teaches you to use explosive gel on walls, and that it can be used to knock out enemies at the same time. This then presents you with another gate with buttons. You think you can just use the batarangs to flip them on, but you quickly learn that that won't work, as they deactivate too quickly. This teaches you about quickfire gadgets, or at the very least quickfire batarangs, which you must use to open the gate and progress. You then have another vent cover to rip off with the backclaw, making sure you understood the previous assignment. After a quick cutscene, you are then prompted to dive through a window, teaching you about dive rolling, and the fact that you can break windows with very little effort. It's followed by another combat encounter where you have to fight 3 enemies, but one of them is armored. This reminds you about stunning and beating down from earlier that you may have forgotten about at this point in the game, meanwhile also telling you about evading during combat, something you didn't learn about before because you didn't know how to dive. Also meanwhile, potentially teaching you about countering during beatdowns, which is a 50-50 chance to occur, but is more than likely going to happen. And with that, you now know just about everything there is to combat. So after one more use of the grapple gun up a super long shaft to make sure you know about it and how far it can reach, you're forced in your first boss fight against Killer Croc. And this fight is all of your skills brought together to make sure you really know everything. Croc has very fast attacks that you can't counter, indicated by the red marks above his head instead of the blue ones you're used to by now, showing that you must evade his attacks or suffer the consequences. On top of that, he cannot be attacked normally. He must be beaten down after a stun attack, making that reminder enemy in the gas chamber all the more important to your success. That said, this fight doesn't make countering irrelevant, as after certain checkpoints, Croc will jump away and spawn in regular goons that you can counter. But you have to fight them while also fighting off Croc, which is easier said than done thanks to Croc's incredibly fast and powerful attacks. Also, in between phases, Croc will pick up gas canisters and try throwing them at you. But if you remember how to use quickfire batarangs, you can throw them at him to make the canister explode and do a lot of damage to him. It also introduces a new concept of its own that also serves as a new teaching moment, that being quicktime events in the middle of a fight. When Croc tries to bite Batman's head off, you need to spam A to escape, teaching you that this will probably appear in other fights later down the road. You learned all this stuff within what was probably a 15-minute level. And believe it or not, the tutorial is still going on. After your return to the Batcave, you'd think you would go out into the overworld to start tracking down the assassins, but instead, you're actually thrown into a radio tower with a bunch of armed enemies. And this is your Predator tutorial. Everything you learned previously is important, yeah, but it didn't tell you anything about Predator encounters, and you're immediately shown how to do it with the throwing of a smoke bomb. You throw it down and are told to grapple up, showing how they'll be used in the future. You're then prompted to turn on detective mode, showing how these enemies are highlighted differently to tell you that they have guns. You're also told how dangerous guns are by Batman himself, as he knows going down there will get himself and/or the hostage shot. So instead, you need to grapple around on these vantage points and take him down from above with an inverted takedown. This room teaches you a bunch of different Predator takedowns that you can use later in the game, starting with that aforementioned inverted takedown, followed by a vent takedown, showing that you don't always have to open vents to get out of them, a weak wall takedown, showing you how obstructions can be used to your advantage, and a ledge takedown, showing how versatile the grapple gun can be. This super quick tutorial teaches you a ton of takedown methods for later in the game. Though I will say it was pretty weird how it doesn't teach you the most important one, the silent takedown. That's my only complaint with this otherwise brilliant section. And we're somehow still not done with tutorials, as what follows after is a crime scene tutorial, teaching you about scanning bodies and using the special time functions of this evidence scanner to find clues and solve cases. It's a very simple case, but one that's very effective in teaching you how they'll be used in the future. In this scene, you also get the cryptographic sequencer, which just teaches you how to use it to unlock doors. Nothing special there. After that is just one more use of it while meeting Enigma to make sure you understood the assignment, and then you are finally allowed out into the open world. And this last section on the way to Desert Plaza teaches you about gliding and grappling, the final tools you need to be successful. And as much as I hate the bridge for how long it is, it's actually a great teaching moment that gives you ample opportunity to learn about gliding and the grapnel accelerator. And upon reaching Jezebel Plaza, the game has taught you literally everything there is to teach. You have learned every single basic the game has to offer, and will only learn more when new mechanics are introduced, like getting new gadgets. Up until then though, you have learned almost everything the game has. The only things you didn't overtly learn about are the aforementioned silent takedowns, maybe countering in the middle of a beatdown, again that's a 50-50, aerial attacks, and glide kicks / drop attacks. All of which you learn just a little bit later and aren't nearly as instrumental to your success, except the silent takedown. Aside from those small things, you learned about everything, and did so in the midst of a really fun opening level. And that's something the other games can't boast about in the slightest. And now, we're ending it off on a weird one. Arkham Knight has the best side mission integration. I know that sounds weird, so let me explain. In each previous game, side missions would just kinda randomly appear without much indication. Usually you'd get a quick notification on screen telling you that one has appeared, which is pretty easy to miss, since you get so many other notifications all the time and have probably learned to ignore them at this point. On top of that, the main campaign never lent itself time for you to actually do side missions. In Arkham City and Origins, your goal is constantly shifting, and you're constantly left running around the map trying to reach your destination in time to maybe stop the villain or save Batman. Why would you waste time helping the first Deadshot victim when Batman has been poisoned and needs to find Mr. Freeze immediately to get a cure? Why would you go after Mad Hatter when you're so incredibly close to finding Black Mask/Joker at the bank? Why would you go after Black Mask's drugs when your objective is to track down Electrocutioner to fight Joker? Why would you investigate a random body in an alleyway when you need to rescue Mr. Freeze from the Penguin? These quests always show up at times when you're really busy, so it never makes sense to take time out of your mission to do them. Hell, some of them are only available at a very specific point in the time during the main story, and if you miss that window, you have to wait until post-game to do them, most notable among them being Mad Hatter in Arkham City, who you have to go to immediately upon showing up, or else you have to wait until the post-game to see him, thus making his impact all the less powerful. They just aren't integrated into the main story, and only exist as their own thing that you'll probably wait until post-game for anyway. Arkham Knight is the exception to this. Its quests work in tandem with the main story so beautifully that you sometimes don't even notice it. The game always takes time to show you when a new quest has popped up. At the very beginning of the game, you're prompted to go after Scarecrow, but are also given the option to look into some missing firefighters, investigate a mangled body, or go after Riddler. And a first-time player will probably do some of these, because you aren't given the same urgency of the main quests that the other games have. Sure, it's important to stop Scarecrow, but he's not an immediate threat that needs investigating at this very moment. The game even tells you that Batman has somebody working a lead on Scarecrow and that it might take time, so why not waste time doing something else while they're working on it? The same thing happens multiple times later in the story. You're told about new side quests popping up while your allies are getting things prepared for you. Lucius needs a bit of time to descramble some codes, Nightwing needs some time to make it from Bloodhaven, Barbara needs some time to recover the clock tower data, and this all serves to give you a break from the main story and try out some side quests. Not only does the lowered sense of urgency give you a reason to take a break and try out some side quests, but the general intrigue behind them is a lot stronger than the other games. A mangled body turned up that forensics were freaked out by, a fire station is up in flames, a burning bat symbol was found on a rooftop, Riddler is doing something nefarious by the train yard? Sign me up, I want to see what the hell these are all about. Furthermore, some side quests are actually required in order to progress the main story. You have to destroy one of Penguin's caches in order to learn where the Knight took Barbara. You need to fight off some Riddler boss while on your first visit to Miagani because Riddler took Catwoman. You need to take down a watchtower in order to get into Stag's airships. You're jump scared by Man-Bat while just peacefully gliding through the city. It's all little things, but they all show you how the world is evolving throughout the night and what else you can do to help Gotham get back to its old self. And on top of that, you have the militia missions, which actively hinder your progress the further you get into the story. Unless you go out of your way to take down the watchtowers and roadblocks, they're gonna keep popping up and make it more difficult for you to navigate the city. Tanks and other drones are also constantly spawned while you're busy with something else, meaning you need to take a bit of time out of your day to destroy them, or else you're probably gonna die. And adding on to this, you are always incentivized to go after these side quests because they're always in your way. Around every single corner of the map, you're going to find something fun to do. You might find a roadblock or bomb as you're driving around in the Batmobile. You might hear Pig's opera music while gliding around the rooftops. You might see the bright red rays of the watchtower turrets, or the smoke from the burning fire station while gliding between islands, or even hear the alarm bells ringing at the bank Two-Face and his crew are robbing. And these pull you in, getting you excited to take on a new quest. But above all else, they impact the world around you. You see Gotham slowly change throughout Arkham Knight as more and more factions make their mark and take over. If you do no side quests on your playthrough, Gotham will look a whole lot worse for wear by the time you lock up Scarecrow. This kind of world change has only been seen in one other game, Arkham Asylum, and that's because the main narrative of the game involves Arkham Island being destroyed, not because of how the player interacted with the game. Arkham Knight is the only game whose world truly changes depending on how you play through it. And it all comes down to the side missions. It's amazing how much story is told through these missions as they slowly take over Gotham, and unlike other games, actually give you a chance to see them during the main campaign. It's one of the few things Arkham Knight absolutely does better than all the others. And with that, we come to the end, chaps. Thanks for watching. What other things do you think each Arkham game actually does better than its brethren? I'd like to know if I missed something, or if you think I'm just talking out of my ass here. Regardless of what you think of my words, do all the YouTube stuff, because Asylum best atmosphere, City best story, Origins best bosses, Night best gameplay. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you later, chaps.